Alright, so my name is Cole, and I'm going to be telling you about Alzheimer's and dementia. So first off, what is the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's? So dementia is more of just a generalized term that describes a group of symptoms that are associated in a decline of memory, reasoning, and other thinking skills. So it's really just a term that is associated with memory loss or memory issues with patients that are aging. And Alzheimer's accounts for 60 to 80% of all cases of dementia. It has complex brain changes following cell damage that leads to dementia symptoms that gradually increase over time. So pretty much the basic difference between these two is Alzheimer's occurs because of brain changes and abnormalities, while dementia is just a generalized loss of memory function. And dementia and Alzheimer's are not a normal part of aging. They're caused by damaged brain cells that can't communicate properly. That results in memory, behavioral, and feeling issues. And I'm mainly going to be focusing on Alzheimer's today. So what is Alzheimer's? First, Alzheimer's occurs with increasing age, typically around 65 and older. There are 200,000 reported cases of people under 65 that have Alzheimer's. That is called early onset Alzheimer's. It is a progressive disease and it worsens over time. But the average person does live around 48 years after being diagnosed. And as it worsens, the body just shuts down completely. Like any basic motor functions become incredibly difficult and hard to do. Like speaking and swallowing becomes very difficult, even walking, just balance, or even to the point where breathing. People forget how to breathe and their body just dies at that point. There's currently no cure associated with Alzheimer's, and there is no proper diagnosis for Alzheimer's. So it's a very difficult disease at the moment to try to figure it out. So what are the symptoms and diagnosis for Alzheimer's? So first off, there's obvious memory issues with Alzheimer's. You know that you have the aphasia and the praxia. The aphasia is the improper word association or recalling of certain words to use in the right context or right way. And then the apraxia is the inability to use motor functions properly, such things as like picking up a pen or being able to walk properly in that sense. These often worsen as the patient ages. There's also mood and behavioral changes. There's deepening confusion of events, time, and place. Even unfounded suspicions about family and close ones develop. As I said, it is a progressive disease, so things worsen, and some things even develop, such as difficulty speaking, swallowing, and walking, that eventually leads to death. There is no clear indication to diagnose Alzheimer's either. There are many tests that are used just to rule out other things and kind of say, well, I guess this has to be Alzheimer's. So first, there are physical and neurological tests to gauge the patient's reflexes, strength, motor functions, sight, hearing, coordination, balance, and that stuff. So it starts with pretty much just a normal physical. And then blood tests are used kind of to like rule out other causes of memory loss, such as thyroid disorder. And then there is a mental status test. These test memory and other thinking skills and capabilities. These are pretty important because it works as like a starting point for the patient. And then as it's progressive, you can see how much it's worsening over time and how fast it's moving or how slow it's moving, kind of to gauge what things are working for the patient, what things aren't working for the patient to use for their treatment. And there's also a lot of brain imaging, MRI and CT scans that are used to look for abnormalities in the brain. Kind of to compare with the current patient and past patients with Alzheimer's disease. As you can see here, this is a scan of the brain with a normal brain, a mild cognitive impairment, and Alzheimer's disease, and it's very apparent to see the areas that are working and functioning properly and which areas are not. So what areas of the brain are affected? There are many areas of the brains that are affected. So Alzheimer's, destroys these neurons and their connecting parts involved with memory. So at first it's going to start with the entorhinal cortex and the hippocampus. So it's going to start at those areas where it's going to attack associated memory functioning parts of the brain that progress and get worse. and it later affects areas in the cerebral cortex responsible for language, reasoning, and social behavior. And it's just going to start attacking other areas of the brain, such as the cingulate gyrus, the cerebellum, and those areas of the brain also. And um, you can see in this picture with severe Alzheimer's and the preclinical Alzheimer's picture, the areas that are attacked very apparently, and it's very huge difference on how the brain is dying very quickly and actively with this disease. And you see why it's prohibiting the proper function of the brain to work in the right sense. Wrong way. There we go. So what is the current research? There is no cure, like I said earlier, and there's no proper and exact way to have a diagnosis for this. And the cause of it is also unknown. It's just one of those things I think happen with old age, and we're trying to investigate why this is happening. So we're investigating what changes to the brain cause this and what changes as a result of this disease. So we're trying to find the difference between those two and kind of this discrepancies so we can find a way to cure this properly. But currently we do know that there's a beta amyloid protein that collects between the neurons. It's formed by the breakdown of a larger protein, an amyloid precursor protein. And patients with Alzheimer's have abnormal levels of this protein, and they clump together between these neurons, and they're called plaques, and they disrupt cell function. So you have the beta amyloid plaques that disrupt the cell function even more, and they don't allow the neurons to function properly, eventually like killing them in the sense. And we're trying to figure out what stages are these plaques developing and why they're developing in that sense. And we also do know that there are tangles that are developing, and this is the accumulation of tau. It collects inside neurons. The tau detaches from microtubules inside the neurons and stick to other tau, forming tangles. And this also hinders synaptic communication and killing the cell. So you have the plaques and the tangles that are hurting these cells, and we're trying to figure out what's causing them, where they're being caused, and why they're not being cleaned out properly by the microglia. And it's failing to clearing this waste and killing the cells even more. We're currently studying these brains through people that are donating their brains after death, patients with Alzheimer's that they're put under a microscope and looked at. And we are also studying CT scans and MRI scans, comparing patients that we know have Alzheimer's and patients who are like going through development. So we're comparing those as well. So what current treatments do we have? So since there's no cure, we're kind of just treating the symptoms currently. There are a few drugs available, such as the cholinesterase inhibitors and the memantine. The cholinesterase boosts cell-to-cell communication. It may also improve the neuropsychiatric symptoms such as agitation and depression. And memantine slows progressions of symptoms and also works to boost brain cell communication. So these kind of just like slow down the progression of Alzheimer's. So hopefully it just lasts a little longer before it gets much worse. And antidepressants are used to kind of just ease their mood. It doesn't make them super agitated, super paranoid or stressed out in a sense, just to calm them down and keep them at ease. There are mental activities used, mental exercises as memory exercises, kind of just to keep those neurons firing and active and working in a sense, so that they are still firing and maybe not allowing them to die as fast, just to slow the progression even more. And there are some vitamins and other alternative medicines being studied, that further just slow the progression of this thing. But the most important thing, treatment-wise, is just lifestyle and creating a safe environment for the patient with Alzheimer's, so they feel safe and protected, and just to ease their behavioral issues and stress and anxiety in that sense. So what are the future directions for this? So first and foremost, we're trying to remove the tangles and plaques, and to get the microglial to do their job and clear the waste again. So we're looking at anti-amyloid, and they found this gene called TRIM2, which triggers the microglial to clear the beta amyloid plaques and tangles, so it performs its job like it's supposed to. And there are other anti-amyloid therapies in clinical trials, just to further get rid of these tangles and plaques. Another focus is to get better diagnosis for this, so we can detect it early, and so we can start fighting the neurons dying as soon as possible. We're looking for ways maybe for like blood tests or other biological evidences such as genes and family histories to see if there's a correlation in that way, which currently many people do think that there's a family line of Alzheimer's, and they're trying to find the best way to indicate it. There's blood tests and urine tests to try to see if there's an accumulation of these amyloid proteins in that sense in there. And here are references. So thank you guys.